What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your weekly movie podcast about remakes, reboots, sequels, adaptations, and why we are in a perpetual cycle of properties and IPs and sameness. Why did it resolve with the right at a fuck? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your weekly movie podcast about reboots, remakes, sequels, adaptations, and why we are in a never-ending cycle of IPs and properties and endless repetition. Are these themes relevant to a modern audience? Why were they relevant before? Is there any reason to mine your childhood for anything other than money? Your hosts are here to find out. As always, I am Blake Schultz, and with me is Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
And this week we are here talking about The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, which is already doing a major sin, in my opinion, of adding a subtitle to your third movie. Either have numbers or have subtitles.
You did numbers before.
And stick to it.
Yeah, you did numbers before. Now you're not. I'm confused. Yeah.
I can't stand it. Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Conjuring :
What is this doing here?
But that is neither here nor there. The movie came out this weekend on HBO Max and theatrically, following the real case of the Warrens after a murder in which the plaintiff claimed that the devil possessed and made them do it. It sounds like it would be on the cover of the Inquirer, and I bet it was.
I'm sure it was, next to the UFO.
I mean, well, now those are there, but, you know, Blink 182 isn't out there proving demons yet. They were very focused. Anyways, it is the third entry in just the Conjuring series, and the 7th, 8th, 9th.
Yeah.
Spinning these off. 3 Annabelles.
I keep forgetting about the curse.
The Curse of La Llorona.
Yeah.
Terrence, what did you think of The Conjuring 3?
It's funny. I love the first two. I think James Wan. Well, let me rephrase that. I love the first one. I really like the second one, although it's basically a replica of the first one, just on times 10.
He sings that whole Elvis song for those kids. I think it really sets it apart.
Those films are very much the same. But I think that's sort of also the case with this exorcism and possession movies. You sort of know what you're kind of getting into. This one I dug quite a bit, more than I thought it was, because it was from the director of The Curse, which I think is the worst of this entire sort of franchise. Like, I'm not going in happy, but what I dug is that it did something a little different. It wasn't necessarily a one-to-one, like in a house, let's go to this house and clear this possession. It became sort of a crime story and a sort of a trial that we have to figure out, go around to these pieces and do detective work and kind of figure out where this curse is coming from. And I dug that being the set piece. A lot. It got me interested. This movie, though, I think above all the other Conjurings, opened batshit crazy. Like the first 20 minutes of this is one of the, I was like, what is going on? And it's weird. It's strategic to sort of open on such a high and then kind of go slow down for the rest of the film. But it worked for me because I was in. I was like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but I'm here from this point on. And I was kind of a cool way to do something a little bit different than the rest of the series did. I think the Warrens are still the bread and butter of this entire franchise. If you have Vera and the lead kind of going, it works because their chemistry is what makes this work. And at the end of the day, like I said, it's very old hat, it's very familiar, but they did enough tweaks here and there to keep me interested, as much more than I think Conjuring 2 did for me.
Oh, I mean, it's leaps and bounds over The Conjuring 2. I think that was a stuffed movie for spin-offs that we still have yet to get. I don't have a Crooked Man movie. I
want one.
So I don't know why that lanky man was waltzing around. We're not singing full songs to children. The first thing it does better, we've cut 40 minutes away from The Conjuring 2.
Yes.
Horror movies, especially these kind, get in, get out, 90 minutes or more. I don't want to sit here on some in-game level nonsense. Even the It movies, we can trim those down. I don't need a 6-hour cut of these kids being scared of a clown. I don't need it. I like those movies, but that's a lot of time.
But possession films have no reason ever to be longer than an hour and 40 minutes.
No, because it's always the same tactic to do this. Right. We're going to get a priest. He's going to throw some holy water. He's going to say some words from a dead language. I also really enjoyed this one. And you're right. From the jump, we're there. I am not used to giant loud bass in my ear at horror movies. That was a little system shock to get to. But these scares and even the dramatic tension of sending this demon from one person to the other and then watching this teenager deal with this but in a weird way where nobody else seems to recall it happening. His girlfriend keeps being like, "What's going on?" I was like, "You were in the room.
So
You were watching this
that
happen."
so that was the one part of me that was confused. I was like, did no one else visually or audibly hear this besides Mr. Warren? Because obviously he knew, and it seemed like until he woke up, no one else was the wiser. And I'm like, there I get because she was sort of far off, but you, young lady, were right next to your boyfriend. You should know what's happening.
Yeah, I feel like everyone should have been in on that bit. Nobody was.
Yeah.
But everything else, the story is very unique. I love the idea of mixing in a trial and this almost like cross country adventure to now deal with like almost druidic
Mm-hmm.
charms and curses and witchcraft. It gives it a very different texture than the other two movies, although we are leaning a little bit out of traditional Roman Catholicism exorcisms.
Yeah.
Also, some great imagery to classic movies. When the priest walks up, we have a very similar shot to the Exorcist movie. You love seeing that. He's wandering around like Jack Torrance at the end of this movie with that sledgehammer instead of the axe. You
Just
love
swinging it.
that.
Yeah.
Great homages to great horror movies. The characterization, this relationship that they both have, watching them like prove it a lot, which was fun because, we have we'll introduce you to Annabelle. We don't need to see Annabelle in this movie. We just cut to her working the case
I love it
because we've been here.
because we've all been here. It's the look on her face when it cuts to her obviously having to go into that house. You're like, oh, she went through some shit when she got into that house, and it was great because she's like, oh yeah, he's gonna say that he's demonically possessed. That's what we're gonna do here.
I mean, yeah, we do this again with this cop with this cold case, and even then we get to see like new versions of their powers.
Yeah,
The whole thing front to back really moved for me.
it
The
did.
scares were pretty good. Not too many like jump scares. There was enough just like classic tension that I was held. I didn't feel like a lot of these movies fall into a trope of if you think this face is scary or like watch me transform and have fangs and that's the horror. I felt like we had enough differentiation in the types of scares to not keep being predictable.
And I also think that it sets early that being possessed or being under their control, you're not in charge of who you see as the other person. So it became sometimes like, oh wait, are they actually trying to stab this, or are they trying to stab someone person? Like, oh, that's cool. That keeps me on my toes because I don't know what it is. And then all of a sudden you sort of break the wall and come out of it and you're like, oh, you're trying to stab your wife. This is bad.
I think probably the biggest challenge the movie has, if you are in real life a skeptic of these kind of things, which I am, I don't think that I'll just buy into it, but I think I also don't buy out of it entirely either.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it's like Ghostbusters ghosts. I don't know. That's not what we're here to talk about. But we know watching these films that in the world of these movies, not our real world, mind you, but the real world of these movies that are based on true events, there are demons.
Mm-hmm.
So then, for the case to resolve the way it does in the real world, spoiler alert, he goes to jail for manslaughter for 5 years, but it's fine. He gets out and he marries his sweetheart. It works out for him.
Right.
But to kind of posit to us since 2013, when the first one came out, 2013, when the first one came out, ghosts are real, and then have your big climactic case be like, nah. It feels like a giant joke that we've been set up, and the punchline, because they shoot that courtroom in such a way that you think he's going to get off. And I actually knew this case. So he got up. I was like, oh
Okay.
man, they're going to change it. Because he looks behind them
He
like he's
looks
in the
at them.
Green Mile.
He
like
does.
it's all fine.
Yeah.
And then we just cut to black and they're like, oh, he
Oh yeah.
went
By the
away.
way, he 100% went to prison.
They don't even let the jury
No.
read the verdict in the room.
No.
So we end this movie on a note of like, it's gonna work out. They did a lot of work.
Yeah, it's weird though because I think I don't have all the intricacies of the actual case, but my understanding is typically they went in originally for a more serious charge. Manslaughter is less than like murder one or whatnot. So
I think even 5 years for manslaughter is pretty good.
Yeah, it's like you're doing pretty well. So I think the jury probably was like, yeah, we quasi believe that he may have been under the influence of something else, but we can't actually be like, yeah, ghosts or demons. So Give them
Well,
5 years, and we'll call it a day.
they have what I thought was going to be explored more in the movie in the mid credits as the credits are rolling, the actual audio
The
from the
actual,
case
yeah,
of, well, what do you want us to do? Say
yeah,
that this kid is innocent and then have anybody who comes in here be like, the devil,
right.
the
It
devil
does,
did
and
it.
it got mentioned a little bit in the sentence. I think by the lawyer. She before she went to the house that we don't see. She kind of was like, then we're gonna have if we open this floodgate, then we're gonna have people saying, "Hey, the devil made me do it all the time." And it does. I mean, you say the title out. It sounds a little goofy when you really think about it, but yes, it does make it a little flimsy if we're now saying that, hey, the court. But it is when you start playing in a different world. The church has a very different stipulation that you have to prove versus
The
law in court.
law.
Yeah,
I also like the point that, courts recognize God every time somebody signs
I
an
love that.
oath.
Yeah, well,
Like,
why can't they
well,
recognize the devil? He's here
well,
too. You got to
because,
have the yin to the
sir,
yang.
only traditional Catholicism has. Maybe we're something else.
Yeah,
But I thought that was great. I thought it was back to form in a way.
I
You don't
did.
have James Wan's secret sauce in it, but
It felt like
way.
watching. Like I'm a True Detective fan, especially that first season. This felt like very much if True Detective and The Conjuring sort of merge into one film. This is sort of what you get, and since I like both of them, I was happy with that. I also am a sucker for love. So anytime love sort of is the reason why that unlocks you guys from basically murdering each other, I'm like, oh, they really do love each other. That's great.
They did it. See, if we had demons, we could have reality shows of if they really love each other, they could fight off this demon.
That's
And
true.
if not, I mean, I think this is all great.
The demon just asks some questions like, how well do you know your husband? Not well enough. You must, I now need your soul.
I now own you. I think that would be great. I would watch it every day.
Indeed.
But, everything that I loved these weird totems that she was making. It almost felt like the original exorcism where I was like, I don't know if we should have these on the film set. Was this is this
Yeah.
okay? Should we be doing
Right. I was like,
this?
we're sort of playing around. Like, is this good? No, can we actually do this? Yeah, there are a lot of things that I liked about this. I like the fact that the whole her sending flowers to that house to put a curse in on them. I was like, oh, that's pretty sweet. I like that. I like that a lot. Basically, the spirit staying one step ahead of them. I was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah, it was a very unique spin on a
Yeah,
story we've seen a lot.
correct.
And I think that's kind of what we needed. Now I don't know. Again, I don't have the case in front of me, but I don't know that
I
there
don't
was
know
a.
what
I don't know that they were
liberties.
finding totems under
Right.
houses and
Yeah, I don't
flying
know.
to Connecticut. And
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
don't know
don't
what
know.
liberties were taken. It worked for the structure of the story that
Well,
they
because
presented.
otherwise, what are you going to do? Have the trial of the Chicago Seven, but with a
Right. I
demon
was
in the
like, we're in a
background?
courthouse the whole time, or like we're just listening to tapes. That's not going to be interesting.
So I think, that's how it sets it apart. I feel like in the horror movie, in the possession world, the exorcism world, we get a lot of the same stuff. The scares are very similar. People are crawling on walls, they're
They're
vomiting,
doing
they're jerking off with the
crick crack.
cross.
Yeah.
Like we've seen it. We've seen
Yeah.
the best of it in the 70s. We're seeing it again now in a big resurgence. And I think this is the kind of weird stuff it needs to set it apart. I like mixing and matching my mythologies a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever. Sure, there aren't we're reading Latin and dead languages. There's obviously not a lot of this going on in traditional religion, but yeah, bring in some other type of totems, bring in witchcraft. It's all there. They've
Yeah.
got a samurai head in their trophy room. Like, what are they going out and doing that too? That's an entirely different philosophy.
That's where I was like, that's
But
something
I want
completely
to
different.
see that movie, and I
How did
want
you
to know
guys
what's
get
up with the
this?
little nutcrackers on the shelf.
Yeah.
Every time we're in that trophy room, oh, I just want to.
I pause every time and I was just like, what is this? What does this thing do? Yeah, they got some fascinating stuff down there that they could mine forever.
And I'm sure they will. I'm
Yeah,
sure they will.
I'm sure they will.
Which is good because I feel like this is what we don't get a lot of. We don't get a lot of if it is real, then what, right? This is one of the first times I feel like they've posited to a larger theme of, well, if there are demons and everybody is doing this, what does this do to our entire way of life?
Right.
Who's getting off because of the devil? And how do you really prove that? How good of a lawyer do you need?
Yeah. You have to be a pretty damn good lawyer to be like, hey, especially back then. I think it's always going to be that way, but I think at that point in time when there was a lot more like we call BS on this show you're doing. You're putting these spirits here, and even if you get one or two people to believe you, that's not going to fix the, like, they got the police officer. They probably got a lot of people in that precinct because there's like, yeah, she did.
Yeah,
Do
they
that.
weren't on the
Let's do
jury
them good.
though.
Exactly.
So then, like I said, we've been doing this since the 70s. Exorcisms have been a story, I feel like, before serial killers, which is like the fascination of now in the 90s and the
Yeah,
80s. It was exorcisms. That was the 60s, 70s, and early 80s
yeah.
in the real world. So why do we keep redoing this story? We just said that it keeps kind of feeling the same unless we splice it up with 12 Angry Men. So why does the box office keep proving that this is scary? Why do I still freak out when I know the girl is going to have fangs and a demon face, and I'm still like, what an unexpected thing to
But I
happen in my
never would
horror
have
film.
seen this happening. It's weird because I mean these have been going like the Omen, the Poltergeist. All of these films have just always existed, and they always bring in audiences. And I think it's people have a fascination with religion overall. Whether they believe it or they don't, they're still like, I am sort of tiptoeing back and forth. I'm curious. Maybe this stuff does exist. And so when you flip that on its head and you start saying, if it does exist, then these sort of have to exist too. You start playing that world of aliens and Bigfoot, and then this is in that weird spot where it feels a little bit more tangible and a little bit more possible than the aliens on Mars or Bigfoot. This feels like, hey, if I believe this and this could also be true. And so you start seeing stories that started questioning that and turning your beliefs like, well, what if? Is there this? Maybe this does exist. It becomes entertainment to some, and they kind of start. I'm curious to watch this. I want to always see this. I question people. I think anybody, and I'm not a believer. I'm not, but I think anybody, as a person who was raised Baptist, I think anybody who does not question that stuff is doing a disservice to themselves. I think you should always have in your head, like, but if this is the case, then this also has to work. And this. And I think that is why these films work, because you start kind of putting the plus twos together. You're like, yeah, this does make me some questions, some things that I may have a little bit more. I'm not as fully willing to just take that leap of faith in. I need to kind of see how the nuts and bolts of this work.
No, I think you're right. I think there's always going to be perverting the safe will always be scary. Taking the safety of the babysitters here and nobody can get in, and having Michael Myers come in. The safety of a camp where everything's supposed to be okay, but there's an unstoppable force, is always going to be something that scares us and gives us a sense of catharsis. Because I think there's also an appeal to, even if the devil himself shows up, we can fight it. I think part of that is the interesting thing, unless you're in the legal system, in which case you'll do 5 years for manslaughter. But there is also, you're right, there's a curiosity in religion. There's a curiosity in messing around with things we shouldn't mess around with.
Mm-hmm.
There's a curiosity in the afterlife. And part of, demons in a way is karma. A lot of it is, well, if you don't do things good, then this will happen. But there's something else also to it where you go, but even if you're really good, it's going to seek you out,
Right.
and drag you down, and it's going to destroy everything. And I think there's also I don't know, a liberation in that even the best of us aren't safe. And I think a liberation in that even the worst of us can be redeemed. I think there's a weird thing in demonology and in the horror world itself of, well, all this happened, but we survived. That you always have to have the survivor. Even at the end of this case, we go, but it's okay. He got married. They're
Right.
together to this day. Everything's fine. We have all these tapes. And I think there's something to us when we go, oh, well, great. Then
Yeah.
maybe my car accident's not that bad.
Right. It is. And also, yeah, there's a lot of like, we put this person through literally pure hell. Like we put them through everything, but they came out on the other side of it. in a pretty good spot. And I think that a lot of people, there is a catharsis of people watching people go through it, because in most of these possession films, most of these exorcist films, typically the lead character ends up okay. Like the demon is excised.
Compared to a slasher film, it's very low body counts.
Correct. So typically that is the purpose of these. So it's a bit of a like a cathartic release. Like, man, they threw everything but the kitchen sink at this person, but they came out and they're good. Like that is sort of that sigh of relief with these type of films when it's all said and done.
There's also then, the idea of it being true. And I feel like for whatever reason, we're much more scared when it's the idea that it could be true.
Yeah.
I think where, looking at the slasher genre again, Scream is based on terrible, grisly murders.
Right.
And there's something about that when you look at it next to Halloween or Jason, where you're like, well, these are unstoppable cosmic forces that you can't do anything about, but it's so much scarier. And Scream's a comedy, but there's something scarier of it being like, well, I was targeted by kids in my high school.
Right.
And there were two of them, and it was somebody that I loved
that I knew
and somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of fear, we want to go see that because it's real. Because, we know Alien is, well, we know the events of Alien are not based on a true story.
Correct.
So when we watch it, I think there's also a sense of safety. I think there's a sense that Ripley's going to get off that ship.
There's a disconnect, not a disconnect, but there's a protecting shield. Whereas, like, I know the stuff here that is not ever going to be a 1-to-1 to anything that I go through. Whereas a lot of these things, you're like, hey, this happened to my neighbor. This could have happened to my neighbor. This could happen in my neighborhood. It is a lot more real-lived and tangible for people.
Well, and then it kicks off the water cooler talk. I think everybody likes to leave a movie that's based on a true story and go, you think that's real?
You think all of this is?
You've always got somebody at me at the table being like, no. And then you somebody go down, else at the table being like, it's happened to me.
It's happened, yeah. And then you go down the rabbit hole and you start looking up stuff and like, oh wow, there were tapes and this was a thing. And you're like, oh crap, some of this stuff, yeah, so they embellished this, but how much did they embellish? And you just start going further and further down. It's sort of like we said earlier with those murder cases and where we are now with making a murder and all that stuff. That's sort of what this creates too when you come out of these films.
And look, even if it's not real, it's creepy that you made that totem. That's weird and scary and creepy. It's a very weird thing where it's like, okay, well, maybe there wasn't a demon, but somebody made a dead rabbit skull and put it under your house with the intention to kill you.
Right.
So
they went out of their way to curse you. So yeah.
And there's power in that. I mean, even, you think about curse words like damn, even is as simple as like, people are like, well, don't wish that on somebody.
Right.
Don't say that. Like, who knows? Like, we all have a weird, almost like manners. There's a sense of being like, don't say that. Like, no, don't do that. And it's interesting because I wonder if part of the happy ending that we're talking about is why this movie ends the way it did. Because I wanted a little bit more of the case. I kind of wanted to watch 12 Angry Men meets The Exorcist. I kind of wanted them to read that verdict.
You wanted to see that out loud and see the faces of the jurors. Because I think that would have been kind of cool too, because, out of the 12, yes, they come to a conclusion, but there's going to be about 3 of them that are probably looking at him in just pure fear. Like, is the devil still in there type of situation? And
it's not like they brought in evidence. Like, they defeat this woman. They destroy her altar. The father of this woman dies.
Right.
So there's really only a trail of death. So they're now, I want to see them walk into court and be like, Your Honor, this witch killed our only witness.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this opens up a lot of other questions. And I kind of want to see, I want to meet the prosecutor. I want to meet the judge. I want to watch. We haven't really ever had to watch them really convince anyone.
Right.
They're always showing up in homes that are haunted.
That are already haunted. And the house, for the most part, is already in it. Yeah, they already know that, oh yeah, we're in it right now. It was weird. And it's probably means nothing, but the prosecutor in this, her face when the verdict is being given seems something of like a caring person. I was like, okay, I just think she might be reading, like nobody corrected her on how to read that, because that just seems odd.
Yeah. Well, and I also kind of want to see them answer that question. What does this do to our system? Because you then have to wonder, if you're really making a fake movie, you could have added a character that's like, look, we believe you. We have to put this kid in jail though.
Right.
Unless you the Warrens are going to defend and be ready to prove sometimes to yourselves that it's not always a demon.
Right.
Are you guys going to do all that legwork?
It's funny. There's the show on CBS called Evil with I call
Yeah.
him Luke Cage with Mike Coulter. That is basically what that show consists of. Is of him. He is the person that kind of go. He and his team kind of go in to call BS on the ones where it's just like simple things. They're like, oh yeah, this isn't like a spirit or a ghost that has happened. This is literally somebody was effing with the security camera and has to edge it. Or sometimes it actually is, and like that's where I think it seems like you want the movie to sort of do some of the legwork that does, even if it's in a small dose, just to kind of like, hey,
Yeah.
or at least have an alternate, like, yes, if this person is possessed, let's have another person that exists to say that, hey, maybe he's just a effed up person, and that's what happened.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I am skeptical, but I'm like, I want to see them be wrong once.
Yeah,
I kind of want to see them go in and be like, so you were possessed, and have them walk out and be like, it wasn't.
yeah, you sort of get
Oh,
like
all right.
a Cape Fear type of ending, where like, oh yeah, he of course he was possessed. He was
Which would
possessed
be
in
a
real life,
different case entirely. But
right?
like, it would be interesting to see somebody pick up on this case and then be like, yeah, me too, totally.
Yeah,
The devil, sure.
sure. Sounds like that works for me. I'll do that one.
Because somebody would do it. Like that's
If you can murder someone, what, 20, I think it was 22 times he was stabbed. If you can do something like that and get away with it being called manslaughter, then yeah, you're gonna have somebody else go ahead and pull that card.
because look, what they did very well in this movie was they're directing this like drunk pet shop owner, whatever it is, dancing with this guy's bride to be, and they show a shot of them like both enjoying it. And I was like, we don't really know this kid. He might have mental health issues that we're unaware of. It was the 70s. We weren't having those kind of conversations.
Correct.
I could totally see where maybe he was like drunk, messed up, had this other situation happen to him, and was just like, I just thought they were
Yeah, I
sleeping
thought he
again.
was attacking my world, or they were doing something that I was not aware of without me. Yeah, like that type of stuff.
It's interesting. So I would like to see a little bit more of that. I
So you went
think.
a little bit more of the court,
Give me a
like
little bit
court
more of the
stuff.
court drama. I know
Yeah.
she's gonna blow smoke in his face. He's gonna walk around like The Shining, and someone's gonna grow fangs and claws and be like, ah. I get it. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna crawl backwards up the. Yeah. I get it. I've been there. We're
Yeah.
gonna throw a cross at him. Oh no!
Like we have 6 or 7 of these movies in this franchise. We sort of know where this
I
is
mean,
going.
not just this franchise,
We're
Terrence. We
just
have been watching old men in
yeah,
robes
yeah,
point crosses at people
and
since
just get
before I
louder.
was born.
Yeah,
Like
no, it's the way it is.
we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah,
The same way that when it's Superman, I'm like, I bet he's got a kryptonite. Does he have kryptonite? I bet he's
I
got a
bet
kryptonite. But I
there it
bet
is.
there's going to be a way that Superman's okay. So
Yeah,
that brings us, I think, to the box office. Here we are, the second week out of everything being okay in air quotes. $33 million ahead of its predictions. The HBO Max numbers, of course, have not been shown to us. They probably will never be shown. I haven't seen a single article about how Cruella did on Disney Plus, but that
they
sequel got a
seem to.
green light.
I said, but they seem to be high enough where Disney was like, go ahead and bring that. I think eventually they're going to put out those numbers, because I think it did well enough where they're like, yeah, this is good. We might keep doing this,
Which is great. And not
yeah.
only are these like good numbers for like a cheap horror movie, these are good numbers in The Conjuring in and of itself. It beat The Quiet Place 2, which it was going to because it swiped all of the IMAX and large format
Took all the
screens
Dolby,
from it.
yeah. Yep.
Which of course it did. I can't think of too many movies that were able to hang on for 2
I mean,
weeks.
I think outside of like Marvel films, you don't really get multiple weeks in the in the
No.
prime theaters. Yeah.
No. Why would you play with cheat codes on? But the last one that came out was The Nun. That opened at 53 million, one of the highest PG-13 horror movies. I don't even know how they pulled that off.
The marketing for that was quite good. because that trailer of The Nun is brilliant. The movie
Oh
was
yeah,
not,
it
obviously,
was.
but yeah, that trailer was brilliant.
Warner Brothers, when they get that marketing machine going, it
They
goes.
yeah,
The Dark Knights interactive campaign, they built a haunted house for it chapter 1. There were red balloons everywhere.
yeah. When they
When
get their
they want to
team,
do it,
they can do it.
they do
Yeah,
it better than anybody else.
correct.
Disney gets to be like, Spider-Man's here today, but
Right, they're
Warner
like
Brothers puts in work
they do.
that
They
I've
do.
never seen before, and I love it.
Yeah.
I think everything should be doing that. That would be great. Uh, the first Conjuring, 41 million, Conjuring 2, 40 million, Annabelle 37, Annabelle Creation 35, The Curse of La Llorona 26, and Annabelle Comes Home right at the end with 20, which
Yeah.
shows a lot of things about how tired we are of that Raggedy Ann doll.
I said that doll is pretty much we beat the hell out of it. Even hearing this name in this movie, I was like, all right, yeah, don't show me, don't do this.
I was thinking a little too like superhero movie, and I was like, they're gonna bring Annabelle out to fight this curse woman. That's what they're gonna get her into their house, and
Yeah.
then she's gonna like open up the doll, and that's how they're gonna beat it.
It's funny with that Annabelle series. I'll say this is that I dig it. I think there's only one really great movie, and I think Creation's really, really good. And I like Comes Home. I hate the first one, but
The
I
first
think
one's
what's good
bad.
about that series, they're literally three completely different stylized films. Like they are nothing alike other than the character, like the main point being Annabelle. They're very like one's almost a YA babysitter film that Comes Home, and then Creation's this weird like back in the past type of film. And Annabelle's
Arm
just
battle.
trash. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's it's the third lowest opening.
Yeah.
But pandemic, HBO Max.
I think right. I was like, I think with the numbers, I think those numbers showing that it was number one, also being released on HBO Max. This is one I actually watched at home. I had a ticket for Friday, and I was like, you know what? This is on HBO Max. Screw it. I'm just gonna watch it at home. And that's what I flipped to, and I watched it there. I think having that option, I was like, oh yeah, I don't need to go to the theater to watch it. I don't feel like going and parking and stuff. Have the option. So there's a lot of numbers that I think are have probably fallen to the wayside for this, but I don't think that matters because they look at that number of just what's in the box office. And this shows you, at the end of the day, even if you have the option to go home, which some people will take, people are ready to go back to the theater. Like if you give them the option,
Yeah.
they're ready to go back to the theater.
Right. And that was good. I'm sure we're gonna get more. The Crooked Man is still coming.
Yeah, this isn't a whale that they're done with. I, and I actually kind of don't mind that. This is one of those ones where it's starting to go back. Like, yeah, screw it. Let's keep going back to the whale until I think the whales completely fall off. We start ending up in that 10 million range. I think they're going to keep doing these
Until we're in space, Terrence. Until we're in space.
We join Dom. We joined Dom and the family in space.
We haven't had the Conjuring in the Hood yet.
That's
we haven't had
that's true. Whenever a horror movie goes to space, that's when it's sort of like, all right, we just don't give a shit anymore. That's sort of the end game of it. Leprechaun went there. Leprechaun went to the Hood and space. Yeah,
he went to the Hood twice, Terrence.
He did. He really enjoyed it there.
I don't know how many more. They're like, the weird thing is like they did Amityville, which is a franchise owned by a different studio.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they're going to do that.
Yeah, this is a franchise that just sort of keeps going, and they I don't think there's quite a map to it anymore. They're kind of just like, we'll see where we land.
Just pick a case out of a hat.
Right. Like, well, which one of those things haven't we talked about in that room? Cool.
Samurai Ghost. I want that. I want to know what was up with those nutcrackers. I want a Christmas Conjuring movie, and I want a feudal Japan ghost movie. And I want them immediately.
Make them happen. Yeah.
Christmas Conjuring. Get Shane Black out here. He'll do it. He loves Christmas movies.
Yeah.
Come on.
This Conjuring universe. Here we are.
Well, that's it, guys. That's the show. I guess there were reasons to make this movie beyond money. Not really.
Not really.
Sure.
Yeah. No. This was.
What do you think? So I saw it in the theater and you saw it at HBO Max. Did you feel that you lost anything not seeing it in the theater?
Maybe because I definitely saw the first two in the theater, and there was definitely that ambiance, especially in that first one with the clapping and everything. The audience was like, "Oh, and it's freaking toes. You sort of miss that. But I think this movie was so different that I don't think I lost too much of that tension. Like this isn't something that I needed to see in a theater.
See, the gasps that you mentioned are what I immediately realized I don't need. Sitting in this theater, and his fingers go over that shower curtain behind me, and I
It
immediately was
was
like,
like,
I could just be home.
yeah.
I could just be home.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny because I mean, I think horror and comedy definitely have that. When you go into the audience, you get that community,
Look, a
community
full
feel.
theater, yes. This is a 60% capacity
Right.
theater, Terrence.
Yeah.
These people are almost a stadium away from me at IMAX, just being like,
And I'm
oh my God, the demon is in him?
I will say this.
It's the name of the movie, sir.
I haven't had this issue yet, but I do think we're gonna have to kind of fix people and correct people when they go back to the theater because I think they've been so used to seeing these big films at home that they're talking to shit and talking out loud and gasping more than they normally would have before. I'm like, hey guys, we're back in the theater again. Cut that out. We don't want to hear you.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good
Yeah.
on it. Have not seen a big comedy yet back in the theater, so
I have
don't
not either.
know.
I do not know how that
There
goes.
has not been the option for one.
Yeah, yeah. It is. I will say this that it's interesting that in this return to theater, we're getting horror after horror after horror sort of be the way that we're kind of entering this between Spiral, Quiet Place.
I think it makes sense. I think horror movies have always kind of had a worthiness about them. There's a communal experience.
It is.
And really, this is all the counter programming. Pretty much every week, there's a horror movie out, so it's what we're backed up on. These are all we're still in 2019 theatrically.
All the stuff that's being released, and we won't get out of that. I mean, hell, Bond, it was supposed to be at the top of that year,
so that's also part of it. These aren't spaced out the way they were going to be.
Correct.
I think Spiral was an October movie, and
Yeah.
A Quiet Place would have been a summer movie, and I don't even know where this was going to fall on it, but
yeah.
So I think that's part of why we're also feeling it. I wonder. I know next week is In the Heights, and then I believe we're back to Fast 9. So I don't know that we're going to see any like genre fatigue, but
no, it's starting to change up a little bit. Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, it's great. This is also, Warner Brothers is dominating this year, which is easy to do when you're the only one releasing movies.
Yeah. I think that's going to change once. I mean, Marvel has 4 films coming out this year.
I mean, right. We're about to really see in a Marvel world if there's fatigue. There or not.
Yeah.
Because we did WandaVision, we did Falcon, we're about to do Loki, and as soon as Loki's over, it is Black Widow, Shang-Chi.
It's just like, I'm keeping my foot on your neck.
What if Spider-Man? I'm excited.
I am too, but this will be the true test of like, is there fatigue? Because we're gonna, and they haven't announced it, but Hawkeye's done, so they're gonna we're gonna throw that in November. Like, there's gonna be stuff just coming at you fast and furious, and this will be the one time where you're like, yeah, I don't really care about the Eternals. We'll see how that box office turns out.
We care about the Eternals.
That Eternals trailer looks great.
Yeah. I think it's going to be great. I think this was great. And I think if you want to be great, you'll leave us a review on iTunes. You'll subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll subscribe to the podcast. You'll follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hollywood Already Did It. I'm at, as always, Blake. Terrence is at Terrence Tatum. I do another podcast called How Do You Figure? And that is our show for the week. We will see everybody next week when we are back with our Marvel pair-ups. There will not be a theatrical movie. In the Heights is original, so we won't talk about it. But I'm sure everybody else will. But we will be coming at you with Jamie Jirach again from comicbook.com. We will be pairing up Loki with a time travel movie, starting with Back to the Future, because it's time to go back in time.
Yes.
So get your Doc Brown impressions ready. And get your weird, creepy dad references ready.
Oh, yeah.
I love that movie, but
it's got some weird stuff.
Yep. All right. We'll see everybody then.
Later.